Welcome everyone to another episode of the Q&A with Sharon's son George podcast. I was my mother's caregiver after she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Unfortunately, she passed on 1/1/2020, and we started TogetherForSharon.com in her memory. Today is one of the most important people I feel in the fight, somebody I really look up to, and so honored that he would take a few moments today to join us. So today we're joined by Ted Thompson, Juris Doctorate. Of course, we're family there too. Is the Senior Vice President of Public Policy for the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. Ted has more than 25 years of experience in public policy and government affairs, serving as several nonprofit leadership positions and a staff of 2 members of Congress. Welcome, Ted. And again, Mr. Thompson, it's just an honor to have you here. And I know how busy you are, so really appreciate you taking the time, not just to talk to me, but reaching out to this beautiful Parkinson's community.
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And as I mentioned, I've been following your work and appreciate everything you're doing to spread the word and get people more engaged and giving people hope that the journey is going to get better and that there are going to be treatments and policies that are going to benefit the Parkinson's community at large.
The national plan to end Parkinson's, obviously, we're going to talk a little bit in depth on that, but that's something that I wasn't even aware until 2 years ago, sadly. But then when I was aware, I just kind of sleep, eat, and live it. I myself have been a guest on about 50 podcasts somehow the last month, and I might sound interesting to you, but maybe you agree. I've tried to target a little bit of people who do not have Parkinson's and people who obviously are not caregivers currently, because I think if we don't get everyone on board this ship, then it's going to be harder to sail and find the cure. But maybe you could discuss again a little bit about your background and what the major focuses are today. And I also have the websites. We'll do all that a little bit, but I want to share with everyone listening the Take Action website where you can actually also join in.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, my background has been, in politics and policy for most of my career. Somehow fell into the health policy world. Before I was in the Parkinson space, I worked at the National MS Society for about 6 years, running their federal government relations program. And that's, in fact, how I got connected with the Parkinson's community, because we worked together on a lot of issues. One in particular was to create a surveillance system at the Centers for Disease Control focused on Parkinson's and MS. So that's up and running, waiting for some data to come out on that. But in terms of the national plan, it had been an idea since I started the foundation about 8 years ago. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago that I felt that I had the team in place that we could really go on the offensive. A lot of public policy work, unfortunately, is you're on the defensive, trying to prevent things from being cut and things like that. But we had an opportunity to be bold and put together this national plan to end Parkinson's Act. I'm not shy about saying how we've modeled it after the Alzheimer's national plan, which has been phenomenally successful. It's created new care models. State and local governments have created special programs. And importantly, it's seen a dramatic increase in funding for Alzheimer's research. And prior to the introduction of the national plan, several years ago, we commissioned an economic burden study because while we have good stories, we have good advocates, people like you, we needed good and better data. And that showed that the annual cost of the disease is about $52 billion a year. Roughly 26 billion of that is being paid by the federal government, primarily through Medicare and Social Security disability. And so that's, been a big part of our messaging the last several years, to get lawmakers to understand that, hey, even if you're not affected by Parkinson's, you really are, because you're appropriating all this money that we spend to care for people with the disease. And if we had better treatments, obviously, if we had a cure, there are ways in which we could save a lot of money. And so that's one of the message points around the national plan, that this is about improving the lives of people with Parkinson's and their caregivers, the workforce. But ultimately, it could lead to significant savings for the federal taxpayer as well.
I was shocked when I found out this is really the first legislation that's focused on Parkinson's disease. Is that something that you struggle with, or are we just excited that, and also I'd like second follow-up is what was your day like, when they finally passed it in the House? Because I was running around, I had clothes on, I was running around in shock, but so happy. And unfortunately, as you know, my mother, it's too late for our family, but I fight today in her memory for all those that we've lost due to Parkinson. I still feel we all have a seat at the table and a voice. My mother really fought this battle, and we didn't have the time to find a cure. But I still feel for those diagnosed today, their caregivers, and those lost. What a day. I mean, it's, I don't want to start falling. I'm 6'2", 200-pound law enforcement. But when I talk about this stuff and think about the people now I consider family, it just was heartfelt and just incredible moment.
Yeah, well, this has been kind of the biggest moment for Parkinson's from a public policy standpoint. Prior to me joining the foundation, I was CEO of the Parkinson's Action Network for a couple of years. And that was an independent nonprofit advocacy organization that the Michael J. Fox Foundation was its largest donor. But it became clear to me that I felt we could have so much more impact on, and frankly, on so many more issues if we built out a policy department within the Fox Foundation. And in fact, we have much greater impact. And taking on something like the national plan, pretty much every department in the at the foundation is involved in it in some way, shape, or form. And we've got external lobbyists helping us in addition to our inside lobbyists. So it has been a Herculean effort. It is definitely the biggest Parkinson's effort in Congress, because all the prior work, I mentioned the surveillance system, we got that done technically under the Fox umbrella, but we've been working on that for about 8 years before I joined Fox. So that was, Parkinson's. We have a Parkinson's research program with the Department of Defense. So that's Parkinson specific. And then there's a special care program within the VA for the roughly 110,000 veterans with Parkinson's. So there, have been some nice wins in the past on behalf of the community. But the national plan seeks to unify the federal government with non-federal entities like the Michael J. Fox Foundation to really look holistically, top to bottom, left to right, at the federal government and what it does, and how we could be much more coordinated between agencies and between, research funders like us and the NIH. And the goal is to come up with a comprehensive plan, including an estimate of what level of federal research investment is needed to really move the needle. And this plan will then be, this advisory council will submit the plan to Secretary of Health and Human Services and to Congress with basically a blueprint for here's what needs to be done to make things better for the Parkinson's community. Yeah, that's kind of simplifying it, but that's in essence what it is. I was extremely excited when the national plan passed. In fact, one of the people on my team had reminded me that it was 2 years to the day from when I gave the green light, let's do this, that we actually got it enacted or, passed in the House. And in congressional terms, that's lightning fast. And I will actually, where I actually was, I was at a doctor's appointment and it was toward the end of the day and he was running late. When I finally met with the doctor, I said, I've never been so appreciative that a doctor was so late for an appointment. It's like, why is that? I said, I just watched the House Representative spend 40 minutes talking about Parkinson's disease leading up to a vote on the national plan. And he looked at me and he's like, thank you. My brother has Parkinson's. So it's just like no connection, that I knew of, but, this random doctor that I was seeing. And, it was very moving to watch the floor debate. But then it was especially touching to realize that I was with the brother of somebody with Parkinson's who really appreciated that we were doing this. So that's part of the job that I love. It's so fulfilling when we do make progress, whether incremental or significant. The fact that, we're trying to help people live better lives.
One thing I really enjoy, and I actually was in politics for some time. I was asked to run for Congress, and I said no. I ran the other way. But I really enjoy the part about this bill that it's bipartisan, and it really, to me, is shocking that we won't get too into it. That any few individuals didn't vote for it, I'm kind of, and I tell people I have the little good guy on my shoulder, and the bad guy, the bad guy wants me to write a letter, but ask, what were you thinking? Maybe you're not aware, and let's try and get you on board. But I just was, maybe you could touch on number one, how important it is that everybody's, in this, and this is not a political, in a way, issue. It's a health, safety, and really life-saving. And also, the other areas, let's really hit hard, because I know we will, even after this talk, how individuals listening today can share this podcast, all the work you do, and now be part of history. That's what my big spiel is, that you can, I might do podcasts 10 years from now, and hopefully this past, but I can't tell you or the listeners that you can now be part of history. I mean, I was honored to have the opportunity through the Michael J. Fox Foundation to speak to my representative. I mean, that changed my life. Even I practiced a 3-minute quick speech for weeks. Got there, unfortunately, got to the part which they were glad, but got to the little part where it says, my mother's favorite time was blowing bubbles with her 3 grandkids, but because of Parkinson's, she can't do that. And I fell apart, but I won't this time. But I was just curious on those few little areas of the topics.
Yeah, being bipartisan is really important, and this is one of the most divisive Congresses, the most polarizing Congresses, and the fact that the final vote of the year in the most dysfunctional Congress in history was a vote to enact this bill almost unanimously. It was a really powerful moment, and several of the members of Congress that got up to speak about the bill. They disclosed their Parkinson's connections, their family members that we didn't even know about. We always start our meetings asking members of Congress or their staff, do you know anybody with Parkinson's? Because that's kind of sets the level, where we don't have to explain the disease as much if they already know about it. As part of our national plan legislative effort, we've recruited, trained, identified, recruited, and trained over 800 advocates as of the end of December. We held over 350 meetings with members of Congress and those 800 advocates, including you. And that has really been a key factor to move the needle, because members, they may care what I have to say, but they care a lot more what George has to say about the impact on his family. That's going to motivate a lawmaker to do something about this much more than just me, telling a story. And so and the fact that you broke down at that moment, I mean, that would be hard to keep it together. And it clearly shows how important this legislation is to you and the millions of people impacted by the disease. So we've been extraordinarily happy with the level of co-sponsorships, how bipartisan it's been in the Senate. It's a 50-50 split, Democrat to Republican. We actually have like 5 more Democrats that are ready to sign on, but we've been trying to have 1 Democrat and 1 Republican. So we're now up to about 40% of the US Senate has either co-sponsored it or they're on the waiting list. And again, it's been bipartisan. We've got tremendous Republican and Democratic champions in both the House and the Senate. Florida Congressman Gus Bilirakis has been a critical leader in the effort in the House. During testimony in committee, he mentioned that he wanted this to be his Christmas present. He wanted this passed the House of Representatives. And there's a long line of legislation that is bipartisan, that needs a floor vote and everything. But he went to the majority leader of the US House of Representatives and he pressed him and said, no, I was serious. I want this done. And so that was really a pivotal point for us to get a floor vote. And so Congressman Bilirakis, like I said, he's from Florida, just a tremendous champion for people with Parkinson's. He's got now 4 family members that either have it or had it. His brother passed away last year. So yeah, and it's been really rewarding for my team, for the advocates, the caregivers, because you feel like we're actually making progress. We're moving forward on something that could really have a dramatic impact on people's lives.
How do we get individuals out there? I know everyone's busy, we have lives and things, and even if it doesn't affect you directly, we need everyone on board. What do you recommend? Because I myself have sent about 15 letters. I try, you don't hear back. Thankfully, my 2 senators are sign on. I actually wanted to interview them, but one, we won't name names here because we love everyone, but one said yes, then he couldn't, then he said he'd do a video, and then that went out the window. The other one, I'm still working, and they said yes, but it's tough. But I think, to me, and I could be wrong, please correct me, it would be a little easier because now we have just to deal with the senators rather than so many representatives. I remember if it wasn't for your organization, I don't even know if I would have been able to reach out to my rep, because one I emailed said they're not my rep. Then I wrote to another, they said they're not my rep. So then I said, do I have to still pay taxes, in a joking way, because no one represents us? So that was frustrating. And I can see how a regular person working with family might be turned off. So maybe we can have a few tips, and also let's push again that everyone, how do they reach out to their representatives? And as you say that, if you are okay, I'm going to share the website right now. So
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we do try to make it easy with our action center. And, at michaeljfox.org/advocacy is where people can sign up in addition to this national plan site. But you made a point a minute ago about even people that don't have the disease, we need to try and get involved. And the reality is, even if you don't have the disease, or live with or knows, a family member with a disease, pretty good chance there's somebody in your network, in your world, that is impacted by it. And because it's a disease of the aging, the older we get, the more likely, we are going to be diagnosed with some disease of aging. And Parkinson's is the fastest growing neurodegenerative disease in the world. It's the second largest, second only to Alzheimer's. And so one would hope that there'd be a common interest in things like the national plan. And in addition to the caregivers and the patient, we really are trying to reach out to family members, because, a son or a daughter being able to tell the story of the impact of their parents' Parkinson's, or their grandparents' Parkinson's, those are very meaningful. So we urge everybody to sign up on our action center so they can take action, know how to contact their members of Congress. But a couple of tips about what's most effective. We have action alerts, which are press a couple of buttons and hit send. Well, Congress gets inundated with thousands of those a day. And so in order to make those emails more impactful, adding a personal story makes a big difference. And here's why. They have algorithms that go through these thousands that come in. And if there are 900 that are identical, but there are 20 that are personalized with your story, those are the ones that the staff pull out to bring to their legislative director or whatever it might be. So that's one way to stand out, is to personalize those emails. Even more effective ways to impact lawmakers is make a phone call to their office and just say, hey, I want you to support the National Plan to End Parkinson's Act. This is why it's important to me. It can be a short conversation. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be a public speaker. Another way is sign up to learn when your congressmen or senators are having meetings in the state, because going in person to tell a story makes a huge difference. That is frankly one of the reasons why the Alzheimer's movement, the HIV/AIDS movement, cancer have been very successful. Is, a lawmaker, can barely have a public meeting without somebody standing up telling their story about the impact of Alzheimer's. And even if you don't know what the legislation is, you can just go, you can tell your story and just say, hey, when you've got legislation coming before you that would impact the Parkinson's community, I want you to remember my story, and I want you to support the community. So you don't even need to know the bill number or anything. It can be that general. One thing that we'll be coming out with here this year is a Get Out the Vote toolkit, because while we cannot get involved in elections, we can encourage people to attend campaign events, contact candidates for office, and get them on the record that they will support the Parkinson's legislative agenda. That's an easy thing to do. And I know there's a lot of cynicism about politics, but I'll tell you that 80 to 90% of the elected officials, Democrat or Republican, they're there for the right reasons. It's all the people you see on TV and social media that get all the attention. They're the ones grabbing all the headlines and getting sound bites, but the vast majority of the members of the House and the Senate and their staffs are really earnestly trying to do the right thing.
I just want to mention to everyone too that Ted and his staff, I met some of the members, they work tirelessly. Like I think part of the problem, like people think like Together for Sharon is just me, but people see because there's sadly some nights I miss my mother so much. She was my best friend that I'm up all night posting and things. But I don't think people realize how incredible you and your team are. That it's just a small office. And when before I even knew that, I thought you were all like 150 people. So I want everyone to, that's why I was very patient and excited to be able to speak to you today. Because again, I'm going to keep saying it's truly an honor. And I know how busy you are. So I just want everyone to know that Ted's a hero because he's spearheading this for years. And if it wasn't for you, I don't think we would be at this point. So thank you again for that.
I appreciate that. And yeah, we may not have a large team, but one of the commonalities with me and everybody on my team is we are passionate about this work. Many of us do have a connection to Parkinson's, so it's even more meaningful. But the other thing, to work in public policy and government relations, you have to be able to thrive in chaos and uncertainty. And we've joked now that like during interviews for, new hires, we're pointing that out. Basically, if you want to come in and try to fit in a square box, and we tell you what to do, this isn't the place for you. We need creative, energized people. We need people that come up with new ideas. And so I'm really definitely proud of my team. And as long as you got this slide up, I want to
Sure, please.
mention quickly that in addition to our federal work, and there's some important new legislation I want to talk about, but a couple of years ago we started state government relations effort, and you'll see pictured there on my right hand, I think, Julia Pitcher, and next to her is Zach Hardy. So they're our state government relations team right now, and through their work, they have succeeded in getting roughly, I think, 12 Parkinson's registries enacted in multiple states. Right now, they're working to get 4 more enacted in Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, and New Jersey. And like Connecticut and New Jersey, they weren't on our target list this year, but people knew what we were doing, and lawmakers with a connection to the disease reached out and said, "Hey, I want to get a registry for our state too." So they've been working on that. They've also been working on legislation to prohibit discrimination based on your genetic test, and working with the American Cancer Society's Cancer Action Network have been focused on trying to get coverage for biomarkers. As your audience probably knows, last April, we announced discovery of the first biomarker for Parkinson's. And, work is being done now to get it into the form of a blood test. So it'll be easy, because right now it's a spinal tap. Not many people want to go through a spinal tap.
Yeah, three spine surgeries are enough for me.
Yeah, but they are working at the state level to make sure that state health plans are required to cover biomarker tests. So I just wanted to highlight the fact that we do have a state team. It's 2 people for 50 states, so obviously we're not everywhere, but in a short time they've had great impact.
Thank you. And also you can contact Congress, share your story like I have. And then here's where Ed just mentioned. So please visit michaeljfox.forum.us and I'll share that also. There's some other areas. Obviously, we won't have the time, but we could probably spend hours on the actual Michael J. Fox Foundation. I myself had the honor to meet Mr. Fox a month ago and then to attend your event or the foundation at the IQ in South Florida was just life changing because, like we mentioned, virtual is great. Unfortunately, we're kind of a little used to it due to COVID, unfortunately, but being there live with individuals, I know for me, Parkinson's for everyone, Parkinson's Awareness Month is coming soon. I'll be at the Parkinson's Foundation Walk and then the American Parkinson's Disease Symposium, but it meant the world to be an actual participant in a Michael J. Fox Foundation event because unfortunately South Florida misses you all, but you always have a home here and I'll fight for you and always please count me in if you ever need anything because he's a hero and an advocate to me. He could have, like many, unfortunately, just kind of quietly, went away and lived his life, but he's chosen as a hero would to fight back. And oddly enough, I told Ted, just for everyone listening, I had unfortunately 2 major spine surgeries. I have another, but The second one, for some reason, it just happened in the hospital. It was Back to the Future marathon day. So Mr. Fox really got me through some tough times of my own, but he's just an incredible human being. And, just want to quickly thank him and please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will say, what you see is what you get. He's one of the most authentic people that I know, and one of the most appreciative people I know. And he personally loves public policy. So, I should mention that as part of this national plan effort, I joined Zoom calls and phone calls with Michael, talking to some leadership in the House and Senate. And several years ago, when we did a Parkinson's forum in DC, he came and we put together a leadership meeting with leaders of the House and all the key committees. So he's very passionate about moving the needle on Parkinson's policy as well.
What was it like the first time you met him, if you don't mind sharing?
Well, the first time was that we were much smaller staff, so the holiday get together was in the office, and it was like a poker night. And I just saw him, and nobody was talking to him at the time, and so I just went up and introduced myself, and we had seen each other at a board meeting and some stuff like that. But that was the first time I was able to chat with him, and he was telling stories, and just a really great guy. And when he was in DC, again, we had this meeting, and he really it was interesting because people run up to celebrities for their signature or their autograph, but I remember him mentioning that with these cell phones, it's so much better because you just take a selfie. You don't have to write, and people have a memento, and so yeah, he's just really a fantastic guy, and frankly, this foundation has done so much for Parkinson's. We have now hit over the 24 years we've been in existence, we've now hit the $2 billion mark in terms of research investments. And that's really been, accelerating in recent years, because when I started 8 years ago, we were at 450 million. So we've gone from 450 million to 2 billion in that 8 years. So one thing you mentioned, a couple of the other Parkinson's organizations, I want to take a moment because, I think a lot of people are frustrated there's so many organizations out there. But when I started at the foundation, one thing that I said we need to do is create a coalition. And so we formed the United Parkinson's Advocacy Council, and it's currently made up of 27 Parkinson's and Parkinsonisms organizations focused on public policy and advocacy. So they've been partners in this. They've been pushing out information about the national plan. It's been a great partnership, and we look for other areas to work together, co-funding research. We've done some of that. So I just want to make sure that your audience knows that we work very closely with the other Parkinson's organizations, because you know what, we're all in it together, and if we're all rowing in the same direction, we're going to get to shore faster. So it's great to have those partnerships.
I think that's important to bring up because unfortunately, at least in South Florida, we'll have the Parkinsons Walk Foundation, then we'll have the American Park, but I never see everyone at the same. So when I was at the Michael J. Fox, I'm like, wait a minute, we are really, family. Why aren't we all? And it's, obviously everyone tries to fundraise for their own areas of awareness, but just was a beautiful moment, at least for that time, to see everyone together.
Well,
Also,
and the organizations do different things. We don't run support groups. We don't do a lot of the things that APDA or Parkinson's Foundation does, and so they become a faucet for me to identify issues that we may not be aware of. So it's a great partnership from that standpoint too.
There's just so much I want to ask, but so little time. So maybe we can at least talk for a moment about the Health Brains Act of 2024, which is a shift a little, not away from the Parkinson's plan, the national plan, but some other endeavors or areas you're focusing on. And then I'd like to touch a little bit more about TED, have a little bit of fun. So let's see if you could tell us a little bit about that plan.
Yeah, this originally was an idea when I worked at the foundation. Our then CEO, Todd Scherer, who's now Chief Mission Officer, he told me that years ago there was a grant program at the National Institute for Environmental Health Sciences that was focused on Parkinson's and neurodegenerative disease. Well, when Congresswoman Wexton announced her Parkinson's diagnosis about a year ago, we met with her and her team, and I mentioned that. And I said, yeah, one of the things we want to do at some point is because the grant program went away, but we want to, enact a law that would create a permanent grant program. She got excited about it. I've been working on legislative language with her team, and on April 30th, so the last day of Parkinson's Awareness Month, the plan is to introduce what's called the Healthy Brains Act. Congress loves acronyms. I'm going to say once what it stands for and never again. It's the Harmonizing Environmental Analyses and Launching Therapeutic Hubs to Yield Bolstered Research and Innovation in Neurological Science. And yes, I'm reading from a Word document because I will never remember that, but it's a catchy acronym. So, the purpose behind this is Parkinson's, unlike a lot of diseases, has many, many environmental risk factors. And so this will create a Centers of Excellence program within the National Institutes of Health, solely focused on the intersection of environmental risk factors and neurodegenerative disease. And at this point, I'm aware of about 5 neurodegenerative diseases: Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, progressive supranuclear palsy, which is actually what Congresswoman Wexton has, MS, and ALS. And so, we're hoping to build broad support for this legislation because it would be the first time we've had a permanent focus by the federal research team on exploring the environmental risk factors. Anybody who's familiar with our work knows that I've been on now a 7-year journey to try and ban paraquat, which is widely used in the United States. It is strongly correlated with Parkinson's. We've got Parkinson's Alley in central counties of California, where the incidence rate is much higher. It's banned in nearly 70 countries, including this world's second largest, China. And ChemChina actually owns the company that produces it. It's literally a deadly chemical. One sip will kill a person. But it has, beyond Parkinson's, it causes cancers and other things. So we've been on a multi-year journey to try and get that banned. We've also been involved with trichloroethylene, which is heavily used in manufacturing and dry cleaners. The EPA, fortunately, recently announced that within 1 year, there will be a near total ban on the use of TCE. And so, the work we're putting into the environmental side of it is because if we can identify environmental triggers and we eliminate those triggers, that means that people will, a certain subset of people that might have gotten the disease won't get the disease. And we know that only 20 to 25% of Parkinson's is solely based on genes. And the rest of it is some interaction between the environment and genetics. And so we just feel really strongly that we should be shining a much brighter light on those environmental risk factors. So if we get this bill enacted, like I said, it'll create this permanent grant program to focus on it. And I believe it's the single biggest thing we can do to try and address the environmental triggers of Parkinson's.
Yeah, thank you for your work. I'm a big believer, unfortunately, that it is the environment, because my mother was only 69, no medical issues at all. But I think in 20 years living in her home, which was a nice home, she had mold, she had termites, who knows what they sprayed. And then I'm sure you've heard horror stories where like even somebody had their whole house sprayed for pesticides, and the little child, they came back too early. I think it was a famous Florida case, but he passed away due to the chemicals. And they were actually following the rules of the chemical or the pesticide company. So they definitely, we need more individuals fighting like you are on your staff. So thank you.
Yes, on the paraquat piece, we've been trying to get it banned. We had a petition, over 107,000 people signed it. The EPA did reapprove it in 2021, and we only had one final bit of recourse. And so we joined with some farm worker and environmental groups and are suing the EPA to get them to reconsider their decision. They're in the process of that. And depending on what they do, our lawsuit is currently what's called in abeyance, meaning it's on the shelf. But if the EPA doesn't ban or institute much stronger mitigations, we have the option of bringing the lawsuit off the shelf and continuing it. As part of that process, last year, we had a meeting with EPA officials. We had scientists, experts in the field at the meeting, but most importantly, we had three people impacted by the disease to be there to tell their story. And, it was like tear jerking to hear. And we've collected so many stories, and people that, said, yeah, I lived in the country and the dust or the crop dusters would, go over and me and my friends would chase it. And, it's just, there's so many ways that those chemicals can be, or people can be exposed to those chemicals. And we've got to do everything in our power to keep people safe.
I appreciate it, and thank you and the team again for all of that. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to shift a little bit more about you. And some of these are, and I always say it's not a Barbara Walter moment, Barbara Walter. So, but obviously you've spent many countless hours like me, but even more on this career in this area and trying to save lives and change lives. Do you have somebody who supports you in times of struggle, like a loved one? Or I'm not sure if you did say you had someone also affected by Parkinson's, or is it mainly because you were also working in ALS and things?
Yeah, no, I don't have a direct connection to Parkinson's, but my father passed at I thought a relatively young age because I'm getting closer to it. He was only 68,
Part of it.
but he worked in the chemical industry. He sold chemicals and equipment. He had a lab at his office. He never wore masks, gloves, anything. And I've often wondered if he had lived longer, whether he would have been diagnosed with a disease like Parkinson's. In terms of my support system, I got a wonderful wife, three great kids. I've got an ailing dog who it's unfortunate, but he's 17 and a half years old, but he's brought a lot of joy. So yeah, I've got a good support system, strong family. And like I said, I've got a fantastic team in the policy department. Each and every one of them brings different strengths and joys, and it feels like a family working with them.
If you were, I always say, if you were speaking to Ted 10 years ago, would there be anything that you would have done differently or look back and told yourself, prior that would have done again differently?
I don't think so. One of the pieces of when I worked for the congressman, I used to go to speak to high school groups quite a bit, and I would tell them, when you're making career decisions, don't base it on how much money you can make, because you can make a lot of money and be miserable. Try to find something you're passionate about, because you're going to be really good at it, and then the money will follow. And I've just been so fortunate to have had a career that has been really fulfilling. When I know a lot of people, struggle, but I love what I do, and I get up every day, and I'm excited to, keep fighting. And so, fortunately, I don't have to give Ted 10 years ago Ted advice to follow my passions, because I had been, and it's been really rewarding.
I think you already touched on this, and I have a feeling I can guess what it'll be, but what is the one moment, the most memorable moment that stand out throughout all your work for awareness that you could share? I mean, if it is December, maybe what's the second one? I have a feeling it was December.
Well, I mean, I did make clear to my team and my family that that was the biggest moment of my career.
Yeah.
So that, it may not have been the thing that motivated me the most, because, honestly, talking to people with the disease, that support people with the disease, that is so motivating, because and that's why, like at the PDIQs and the different events around the country, I want people from my team there, because there's nothing like hearing the story firsthand or seeing firsthand what a struggle people with advanced Parkinson's are having, to motivate you. And I'll mention one other thing. Back when I was Parkinson's Action Network, there was a gentleman that worked in the Obama White House whose mother had recently been diagnosed, and he offered to put together a Champions of Change for Parkinson's disease event. So we did that, and we had several members of the Obama administration come to it, and we honored a bunch of people, many names that you're familiar with from the community. But I remember, I was kind of in charge of the event, and when I got up there, I did say, "Listen, I don't have a connection to this disease, but I've got connections to other diseases, and I don't know what disease I might get, and all I know is I want somebody fighting as hard as I am for those people, because they deserve it." And I have a brother that passed away from idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. There are no medications for it. So, that he was on my mind that day. He was still alive at that time, but it's like, I want somebody fighting for him as much as I'm fighting for people with Parkinson's.
Sorry to hear that, by the way, even though I'm a little late. But next was, if you were asked to write a script to a movie about your life story, what would you call it?
Oh, wow. You should have given me these in advance.
That's the fun part.
Yeah.
You're allowed to
Well,
skip. You can skip.
yeah, no, I have a lot of stories from my time in Congress, and people seem to enjoy hearing them. I've been interviewed by an independent counsel that was investigating it as a cabinet secretary. They're just, I've met presidents and vice presidents. It's just been such a journey. Trying to think of the title of a book.
The never-ending story. There you go.
Yeah, it could be corny, like it's been a wonderful life. I know that's taken, but a reversion of it. But yeah, it's been a enjoyable journey. And life is short, and that's one thing too. As passionate as people get, and as wound up as people get about so many issues, as you might know, as we get older, we realize there aren't that many things that are that important to get so wound up about. And life is so short. Why should we live life with so much anger, toward other people, and so much judgment toward other people? I just really believe that, we're all, one, family, and as humanity. And that's been something that, because when I was younger, I, would get wound up and passionate about stuff. But as you get older and you have kids, and, raising kids is, a real challenge. But yeah, I wish people would focus on solace and happiness. It would make the world a much better place.
Thank you. And final question, and maybe after that, we can just reiterate how important it is that everybody listening share this, but really the most important thing is help support the national plan to end Parkinson's disease and reach out to your senators. But if you could leave the Parkinson's community today with some words of encouragement, what would they be?
Well, I'm going to steal from one of your prior podcast guests, Congressman Paul Tonko. He was the Democratic lead in the House, has been absolutely a fantastic champion, and he made the point, it's about giving hope. This is about hope. And so that I've used that before because it just sums it up. This is about giving hope to people with Parkinson's and their families, anybody impacted by the disease. What we're doing here is really trying to fundamentally change the trajectory of the disease, to make life better, to develop, more treatments, eventually find a cure or cures, because Parkinson's, like so many other diseases, it's not a single disease. So there's never going to be a magic pill probably, but yeah, so I want people to walk away feeling hopeful. And listen, well, another statistic I didn't mention yet, but when we embarked on the national plan, we knew that the advocate community would get really engaged. Well, since we introduced the bill a couple years ago, our advocate database has tripled. We've got 3 times more people engaging with us, and we've got a goal of adding another 35% in 2024. So that tells me something. It tells me that people have hope. They want to be part of the change, and they want to help us and the community move the needle. And while I work for the Michael J. Fox Foundation, I like to point out I'm here for the community. I'm not lobbying to try and get Michael J. Fox Foundation a tax break or an earmark or whatever it is. I'm here on issues common to the entire community. I just happen to work for this foundation. But and the mention of the Unified Parkinson's Advocacy Council is representative of that. That we're trying to have a big tent, as broad a reach as possible, and it takes every organization, every individual, to raise their voice and help get positive policy enacted at the local, state, and federal level.
Excellent. Thank you. And I just want to reiterate that this might be a podcast or a talk, but it can't end here. We have to keep pushing, keep fighting until this plan is done. And then maybe we can have another podcast in the future about, now, once it's passed, what happens next, because that's something we just didn't get to, but I'm really curious, but maybe we'll see it play out for real. So I just want to thank you, your staff, the whole Michael J. Fox Foundation, Mr. Fox too, for your time. It really means the world to me, and not just me, but somehow the 30,000 people who visited TogetherForSharon.com, which I'm still in shock about. And hopefully those 30,000 will share this with their 30,000, and we'll just end this disease for once and for all.
Yeah, well, thank you again for having me. And my final parting comment in terms of one thing you can do is if your senator is not yet a co-sponsor of the bill, pick up the phone, call his or her office and say, listen, I want you to be on this bill. It means so much. Our strategy now is solely focused on getting it through the Senate. We've got, solid connections to the Senate Majority Leader, Chuck Schumer, whose mother has Parkinson's as well. So it's been a massive effort, and we're not going to stop pushing until we have it on President Biden's desk and we're at a signing ceremony. So that is our hope, and we need everybody on this journey. And as you had highlighted earlier, it's bipartisan. It's not Democrat or Republican. So it's easy to get behind it, and it's easy for U.S. senators to support it because it's bipartisan. It's for the community. It's really an important piece of legislation.
Thank you again. And this has been another episode of Q&A with Sharon and George. One last thing, I always leave every podcast with this little note. This goes to you, your staff, and everybody out there. And I'm excited to meet you, I hope, at the Parkinson's Unity Walk. Everyone listening, feel free to join us. New York City, Central Park, 30th anniversary. Michael J. Fox Foundation has been just incredible to pursue this and also continue it. Because I believe there was maybe a different group years ago, but maybe COVID shut them down. So it's really amazing that your organization's brought it back to life, literally.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it's a great event. So anybody who can make it, please join. It's the biggest Parkinson's walk in the country.
That's going to be amazing. But to end, I just want to say we love you all. We support you. We care a lot about you, and you're never alone in this fight. I, alongside with Mr. Thompson and the entire foundation, will advocate for you, and together our voices are so much stronger. And I always kind of say at the end, I'm just getting started, because meeting individuals like you, the IQ event, just really, in a way, re-energizes me to want to keep fighting, even though some days it's tough. And I'm gonna, after April, I'll probably lay on the floor and not even make it to the bed. But it's, every time I want to stop or give up or even think of my mother, how we lost, I think about all those individuals diagnosed today, their families, and in memory of all the ones we've lost and myself. It's just, you can't give up till this is completely over, not just the bill. That's one step, but we have to keep fighting until we cure this. So again, it's just incredible talking to my wife and family, how excited I was to meet with you today. And I look up to you and everybody out there. And we're always a family in this, but you always have South Florida on your side. So thank you again, sir.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thanks everyone for listening. Again, please share this. Please support the bill. Most importantly, you have to contact your senators. This is an individual named George, who Mr. Thompson knows well. It's become also a mentor to me. Always mentions you have to say urgency. So that's how we're going to leave today. This bill is urgent. Its lives depend on it. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, thank you all. And thank you, Mr. Thompson.